Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Moore with Audrey Helps Actors Podcast, and this is episode number 80. Feeling like you want some safety in this world, in your career. If you are looking to get an internal sense of safety, an internal sense of happiness and health and well-being, that is what today's episode is all about. We are talking to Leigh Hall. Leigh Hall is a successful former actress turned successful current therapist, licensed therapist here in California. And I met Leigh at a SAG-AFTRA Mental Health Day put on by the great Jenna Doolittle, the one and only, the magnificent. And, I'm just continuing this month about self-care and self-health. I had another dear friend lose their life this last week, and I'm just really wanting to contribute to whatever I can for resources, understanding, perspective on the mental health importance and challenges facing those of us that are actors, artists pursuing this industry after, not sure, this pandemic 2022. So I'm really excited for everyone to listen to this episode. I listened to it like 3 times. It's so good. We do have a bunch of resources for mental health, for access to affordable mental health, and links, things that you can look at, listen to, download, contact. We asked Leigh for a list and she gave us one. So that is in the show notes of this episode. So please take a look into that. This is the last week of Market Research March. April is coming, which means Self-Tape May is on its way. Self-Tape May 2022, pew, pew, pew. So I hope you have finishing up, or maybe you're gonna start your market research. Listen, market research doesn't have to be in March. It's just prepping, always prepping to know more about how to be viable in your market, in your career. So please do that. If you haven't listened to the episode with Christina Colgan to understand what to do with your market research and why market research is important, please go back and listen to that episode. I also love it, those of you who are posting on Instagram your market research and are tagging me, and I love that when you do it. So please continue to do that. Okay, getting an iTunes review is like being in the middle of a pandemic and somebody showing up with like a truck full of plants. If you're like me and you just like became a little plant mom in the pandemic, and each little plant, it's just a little happy plant. They're just so happy. That's how your iTunes reviews make me feel. So you can rate and leave a review on whatever app you're listening to this particular episode on. And reviews, I want to shout out, the socks make the outfit. Whoop, whoop. Camsia Hand. Davkel. Sync Studios LA. Thanks, everyone, for your fantastic reviews. This episode is sponsored by Jeff Pride at Self-Tapes Here. Jeff Pride, Self-Tapes Here. He's been helping people book jobs for years and years. Couldn't recommend him more highly. Carla Zuniga on Instagram at Carla Zuniga Hair. I need to reach out to her. She needs to cut my hair again. I'm ready, Carla. And Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. We have to do voice class. I love a voice class. Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. All right. I hope you're setting up your self-tape audition, and I hope that it's easy and that it feels like just such a great character for you. And I also hope that like right when you finish editing it, you get a call from your agent that you booked the last tape that you submitted. So yay, book it! Audrey helps actors because they don't know anything. Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Moore with the Audrey Helps Actors podcast, and today we have
Leigh Hall. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you and I could take this time. It's a really big priority to me, the mental health of actors and artists, and I know it is for you as well.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it is definitely such a difficult life at times, and it can be really hard to prioritize your mental health when you are trying to make it as an artist.
The time.
Yeah.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. Right. So you and I first met at a mental health day at SAG-AFTRA in the before times, thanks to the wonderful that Jenna Doolittle, everyone. And I was just so impressed by your just intelligence, empathy, and communication skills.
Thank you.
I remember seeing you that day and being like, that girl, she knows what's happening here.
And well, I used to be an actor too, so
Exactly. Well, that's part of what I want to talk about. We do a lot on this show. We talk about transitioning to other careers for a lot of actors. I think that's something that's happening now in the pandemic as much or more than ever.
Yeah.
A lot of people leaving larger markets to go to smaller ones and possibly make this just adjusting their expectation of how acting is going to fit into their life. So you had studied theater in college, and you tell everyone just a little bit about your writing, acting journey a little bit.
Yeah, I studied theater at Princeton, and acting was the only thing I ever really wanted to do when I was growing up. So I majored in art history because they didn't have a theater major at the time, but they had a really good program. Moved out to California, started auditioning pretty quickly, got a manager and an agent pretty quickly. I was 22. My first job I booked pretty quickly, which was a series regular part on a TV show called Live Shot, which no one has ever heard of. It was on, there used to be a channel, network channel called UPN.
Oh, right.
And this was sort of in the early days of UPN. But it was, obviously a huge deal for me. It was a recurring role. They made it a series regular role. And the very next day it got canceled. That was my big break. And then not a lot happened for a really long time. And I honestly think a big part of the reason that it was hard for me to really catch momentum and keep it going was because I was so anxious. I had so much self-doubt, and I would go into auditions in a headspace that I don't think was really beneficial. And I don't think that helped me. And I was very intimidated too. I did various things. I worked with a sketch comedy group for a while. We did a bunch of shows that were super fun, and made a bunch of short films that got into festivals and even won some awards. Again, did a few web series, a few films, some TV stuff. But like I said, for me, it was never really enough to sustain me. So I always had to be. That was really hard for me too, because I often felt like the jobs I had were just things that I really hated and didn't want to do. Like I worked at Urban Outfitters when I first moved out here.
Right. Yeah, right. Yes. Getting real.
Yeah. I temped for a long time. So I'd be like a receptionist, for a week or 2 weeks, or sometimes for a few months. I temped at an architecture firm. I worked for Frank Lloyd Wright's grandson for about a year.
Wow, that's crazy.
I taught. Eventually I ended up teaching English as a second language, which a lot of actors get into teaching.
Yeah,
of some kind, and enjoyed that a lot. But eventually just realized I got a part in a film, and it involved driving up to Lake Isabella, I think. And I didn't want to do it. And I shot the 2 scenes or 3 scenes that were here in LA. And then I kind of asked if I could just not do the Lake Isabella part, because my part wasn't really important to that. And they were like, yeah, sure. And that's when I kind of realized, I wouldn't have done that before. I wouldn't have turned down anything, really.
Right. Any scene, any moment.
Anything, pretty much.
Right.
So that was when I realized, I don't know if I really enjoy this anymore. And even when I shot one of the scenes here in LA, and the director was like, oh my God, that was amazing. We got it in 1 take, and we were running out of time. The this is so great. And that was really nice to hear. And I was kind of like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was when I decided to go back to school and get a master's in clinical psychology.
Wonderful. And you went to Pepperdine. And
Yes.
then tell everybody just a little bit, like, did you have a morning process? I know for a lot of people, and I'm sure I know you work with a lot of actors. You know, one thing that I think is really important for everyone always to be asking themselves about whatever their job is, but certainly as an actor, is how's this doing for you? You know, is
Absolutely.
this satisfying? Is this, and it's been hard, I think, for most actors during the pandemic, because what is satisfying about it and the community of it and going into rooms, and it's just changed like so many jobs overnight. And a lot of people, what they've signed up for is not what it is currently in this moment, and who knows what it will return to in any form. So tell me a little bit about this process of, I don't know, digesting the reality that you had invested all of this time, energy, and money into a career that you were going to decide no longer to pursue. I think that takes a tremendous amount of courage, a lot of humility, and a lot of self-awareness to know this isn't for you anymore. This isn't it. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah. And I think that was honestly what kept me in it for so long. Maybe you've heard of the sunk costs.
We talk about it all the time on this podcast.
Fallacy,
sunk cost
right?
fallacy. Go ahead and tell it for any new listeners who are maybe listening.
The idea is you're doing something and it may or may not be working out for you. But let's say it's not working out for you. And you think, I can't quit this because I've already put, like you said, so much time, effort, money, so much of myself into this for so long that if I quit now, it's all going to be a waste. And so then you keep kind of, for me, maybe banging my head against a wall, so to speak.
And how long do you feel like that window was for you of like sort of realizing maybe this isn't for you to you then having the courage to walk away?
I'd just say maybe 5 years.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I feel like it's usually about a 5-year window.
Yep. I'd say that's about how long it took me. And I was doing some stuff. And actually, it's interesting, shortly before I started to go to grad school, things had picked up a little bit even.
Always.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my friends said Hotel California song is about Hollywood. And she said, you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave.
If someone offered me, I would consider it.
For sure.
Because it's just so
it's
much
always
fun.
In you.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. But for me, trying to do that and be a therapist just didn't feel, I know some people who do it, and it just didn't really, for lots of reasons, it didn't seem tenable to me. Unfortunately, I really, my studies really felt like something I was kind of not meant to do. I often don't like to use that expression, but just something that really fit for me and aligned with my values. It wasn't as hard as it sounds, and maybe it's because it took 5 years. It was
Yeah, there's a quote that I really love about change, and it's basically like, you have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. It's not enough just to go to one phase, but like for people, especially with jobs, to leave a job or to leave a really valuable relationship, usually. It's like if you're in a long-term relationship with anything, whether it's a job or a person, you just have to be over being over it, over it.
Yep, exactly.
And it takes that time to sort of, the emotional cost of staying in becomes more expensive than the emotional cost of getting out.
Yeah. And to be totally honest, I can't even give myself full credit for the decision to actually make the shift. I had spent the holidays with my family. They're all on the East Coast. And I was talking to my dad over lunch one day, and I was talking about my good friend, Winnie Flack, who's a therapist. Yes. We were college roommates, actually. I was saying, it's so interesting when we talk. I love hearing about her, her work, her studies, the way that she looks at things. And I just kind of kept talking about how interesting I thought that the work was. And when I got back to LA, my dad called me and was like, why don't you go to grad school and become a therapist? You seemed so interested in all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't this occur to me before? I don't know. I think I was still just kind of stuck in this, like, no, I said I was going to be an actor and I'm going to make it work.
Mm-hmm. And the math wasn't working out. I mean, that's one thing that I just have to tell people, like, this year, you know, as the pandemic rages on, I've had more and more friends sort of moving on from the career, and in full support of that. And I was talking to my husband about all the people that I was in school with and how many people are like, the ones that I was like, you're going to be this famous person, you're going to be like this famous person, just like so certain. And that there's very few people really left standing and doing it. And my husband just like so simply was like, oh, well, of course, if only 3% of SAG-AFTRA makes enough to make a living, then it's quite literally not sustainable for 97% of the people that pursue it.
97%.
And I was like, oh, right, math, right, you know, and just sort of dawned to me the reality of it, and that you can sort of go through for a certain point. But things I talk about on the podcast all the time is that there is the art form of acting, and then there is the lifestyle of being an actor. And I'm just so passionate about everyone really understanding, not in a jaded way, not in a bitter way, not in a grumpy way, not in a mean way or a mad way, in a very, I hope, transparent. And my intention is to bring healing and to bring understanding to the professional pursuit for those at any level of the pursuit, because it doesn't change, I know, for my actor friends who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s. Exactly. They all feel the same way.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I think what you're describing is a kind of radical acceptance of what it is without because you're saying without the anger, without the bitterness, without the grumpiness. That's like turning up your hands, you know, accepting what is, which might mean you keep going and might mean you don't.
I love that radical acceptance idea. I'm going to like title this episode Radical Acceptance. I'm so excited.
That kind of works, yeah.
It does, right?
Yeah.
One thing I also really want to talk to you about, given all of this, is then your transition into grad school and your transition into this other life. When did you start to feel, was it immediate or gradual or eventual, that this other path that you were walking on felt like a right path, a good choice? Did you wrestle with doubts, and how long did those last? Or, you know, I'm sure they still pop in, but what is that?
I think for me, it happened pretty quickly.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And again, I think that just confirmed for me, this was the right choice. Again, it took me years to really get there, to fully radically accept this career path is
not for you,
not working for me. And maybe I could keep trying, and you never know, something could happen. And I just didn't want to anymore. For me, it happened pretty quickly.
I also want to ask about this thing that you had said about the sunk cost fallacy, because I think it's so important. All of those years that you spent as an actor, all of those years that you spent creating content and going to improv classes and being in things, and was that completely useless and pointless experience to your life?
Yes. No. Talk about radical acceptance, though, right?
Yes,
because that is one thing that sunk cost fallacy is really fighting with reality, right? Absolutely not. Oh my God, I had so much fun. One of the things I loved about being an actor was the community aspect of it, and working in, like you were talking about, in a shared space with other people. I was just thinking last night about this project that I did that was honestly like super cheesy. It was it was like a web series commercial for Kellogg's cereal.
Hilarious.
And it was a musical about breakfast, and it was so enjoyable because everyone on it was just so nice, and everybody was just happy to have the work, and the director was so kind, and it was like a 4-day shoot. We ended up singing and dancing till like 3 a.m. on the last day. I had blisters all over my feet, and I loved it. It was a great experience. And it was so, like, again, was that the kind of work that I wanted to do? Was that like in alignment with my values? And no, but it was wonderful working with a group of really nice, really committed people.
That's
and
wonderful.
so it's not even about the end result sometimes. It's just about how great it is to work with people on a project.
I'm so glad that you just said that, because I do think that there is this tendency to want to make everything mean something to the next thing, as opposed to like, you know, how many friends have I had in my life that I'm just no longer talk to? And it's not because I don't like them, and it's not because they're not great people. It's just, it's hard to maintain all of the friendships, especially actors. We make such strong friendships so fast and over, you know, and then are gone, right? And I've made so many incredible connections. And I don't talk to those people, but I'm not like, was that friendship worth the investment?
Right, exactly.
Was that friendship worth the time? Like I truly, and I might feel a little sentimental sometimes about it. And I might think, gosh, yeah, I bet if we talked again, like we could have that same, and I'm sure that's true. But I look back at it, just like you're saying, with incredible fondness for the time spent and the life experience.
Yes.
That I had at the moment of having that relationship.
Yeah, and even silly things like just being able to say, "I've been on TV." You know, I've like not that many people can say that.
No,
you know,
that's right.
That's kind of cool. I can.
That's fun.
You know,
that's wonderful. And then I want to ask you a little bit about, because you have this experience. I feel like I'm on two sides of the mountain, right? And so much of what I want to talk about is when you had emailed me, we're like, what are we gonna discuss? And the first thing I want to talk about is this hierarchy of needs pyramid. So do you want to explain what that is? Or do you want me to explain what that is?
Go for it.
Okay, great. So it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this happened because my mom recently was talking about my little sister. You guys, my little sister, she's a hot mess. I've got her in therapy. We're going to figure it out. But my mom was basically trying to say to her, you know, about getting your basic needs met before trying to find career fulfillment. And so my mom sent her this hierarchy of needs. And on the bottom of the pyramid is physiological needs: food, water, warmth, rest. Right? Then the next level is safety needs: security, safety. Then the next level is belongingness and love needs, so intimate relationships, friends. Then after that is esteem needs: prestige and feeling like you have a sense of accomplishment. And then after that is achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. And I really thought, gosh, if that doesn't describe the majority of actors who I think are really stuck psychologically between a rock and a hard place because their bottom pyramid needs are not met.
Yeah.
And they are trying to set up and achieve these higher pyramid needs. And that's also such a metaphor, I think, for like the American dream and this attitude of, you know, just work harder, work harder, you know. And anyone who's ever, you know, been friends with people of different economic statuses, I feel very fortunate to have that in my entire life. And you can see that one experience of money and time and energy and investment is very different from another's experience of money and time and energy and investment. I'd love to talk about that.
Such an important thing that I think we have this sort of misconception that it sounds like your sister may be laboring under.
Waking up to.
Which is that when I am fulfilled, then I will take care of my basic needs, right? Like a similar way that people will sometimes, you know, eat frozen meals every night and say, you know, when I'm in a relationship, when I have a family, then I'll cook. And, you know, there's no point in me just cooking for myself or taking care of myself. This idea that first we get the fulfillment, that we get the money, maybe we get the prestige, we get the creative fulfillment, and then I can start taking care of myself. And then I can be happy. But it doesn't work that way, right? Because if you're, like you're saying, if you're not taking care of your basic needs, including a sense of meaning and a sense of fulfillment in just kind of your daily life, like not the maybe top of the pyramid type fulfillment that we're talking about, but just like feeling like your daily life has some meaning in it and some pleasantness in it. Then how can you possibly be in a space to do your best work creatively or to even, you know,
enjoy it,
much less enjoy it.
Right.
Or to even be able to pay your rent and, you know, have a job and go to auditions and, you know, do projects on the side requires so much energy. People have this idea, again, of when I achieve this goal, then I'll be happy. the truth is, if you work on your basic, and when I say happy, I mean fulfilled, really. I mean, again, the sense that daily life has meaning.
Great.
You're not happy all the time. You're not bouncing off the walls,
right?
Necessarily. Maybe you are, but
yeah, maybe that's your person.
Exactly. Maybe that's you, yeah. But you just have a sense that your life, has some purpose, some meaning, and some pleasant stuff in it, and it's not just a, drab sludge towards your goal that's going to make everything great.
I love what you just said, because that is so spoken accurately by somebody who's spent years in the industry and really, I think, understands what those feelings are that actors feel a lot of the time.
Yeah. When I was working at Urban Outfitters, I didn't, and I was auditioning, and at the time I didn't drive when I first moved out here. So I was taking the bus to auditions. Back then it was even less easy to travel with public transportation in LA than it is now. Living in a studio apartment, just kind of not really enjoying much. Again, working jobs that I didn't care about and thinking this is what I had to do. Again, it works the other way around. Find the things in life that matter to you other than just your acting. Devote some time to those things. And absolutely, you've got to take care of yourself on the basic physiological level. You just have to. And this country doesn't make it easy to do.
Late stage capitalism, not great for self-care.
Absolutely not. It's not great for women. It's not great for people of color.
Equality,
it's not great
exactly.
for and
a lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, individualism, hyper-individualism was absolutely, again, something I was thinking about related to all of this and how that plays into how disconnected we feel, especially when, again, we're working a job we don't maybe care about. And we're trying to squeeze in auditions at the same time and maybe auditioning for projects that we don't care about and finding a hard time getting excited about them. So you're just not necessarily going to be getting a lot of joy and fulfillment from those things. So
all the time.
Yeah, maybe some.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Right.
But where else are you getting it? And are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your mental health, your physical health? Again, hard to do in this country when you don't have a lot of money, but so necessary.
Yeah, this reminds me of so many things. I just am loving this conversation because I'm talking a lot this season about infrastructure, and I'm talking a lot about what is called coping. And so coping is just trying to stop the bleeding out.
Right.
So you're not actually making any growth.
Yeah.
You're just trying to stop the bleeding. And that can happen in businesses all the time. And for a lot of actors, they're just trying to stop the bleeding out. Or even as a later stage, most actors that for a long time, I think, are just bleeding out and are like just hopeful that something will happen that will change the bleeding out. And then they get to a place where they've lost so much blood that they're like, I think maybe I'm going to faint and I can't walk anymore. And like, maybe I need to stop the bleeding out. But wait, Leigh, wait, I have to interrupt you.
Help me. I need some help.
And now it's time for listener questions.
I'm so scared.
This listener question is brought to you by Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. That's Greg Saffel at Singing Lessons Los Angeles. Greg is so great. I just had another friend ask me on the DL, like we had lunch, and this friend was like, so voice lessons. Do you really recommend Greg? And I was like, yes, I truly, really recommend Greg. He is so great. He's so nurturing. He gets fantastic progress. I myself have worked with Greg. I still work his tapes. I work my voice all the time. So if you are a person that is looking for emotional range, working on presence, if you want to work on having presence in your tapes, if you want to connect to your inner voice, it's the same voice, your like metaphorical voice and your actual voice, they are connected. So if you want to bring more of yourself to the page, more of yourself to the tape, working and strengthening the confidence of your voice is essential. Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. For all your listener question needs, please call 667-ACTOR-70. That's 667-ACTOR-70 for all your listener question needs.
Hi, Audrey. This is Sarah in Los Angeles. I am loving the new season. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And I had a quick request. It's not really a question, but maybe you want to answer it like it's a question. So here it is. I just started singing lessons last year. So I've been in singing lessons for almost 9 months, and it's been awesome. I'm really glad I did it. However, I'm not really sure how it translates to acting, and I know that it does. I trust you. I just wish I had a deeper understanding of how vocal training works for the actor. I have developed a pretty decent singing voice, so it's not really a concern that I'm not seeing progress, but I just don't really understand what is happening to my vocal cords or whatever that's making me a better actor, or if there are things I should be learning in my singing lesson that are going to translate to my acting that I could have more awareness around, because I'm a nerd and I like to learn how things work. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for this request. I am going to make it a mission to have some training people on in terms of instrument training and really understand both in body and voice why that is important. And if I can just offer you a little bit, I would say you have to think of your body as a literal instrument, kind of like a cello. And you have your resonances, which is, you know, the actual physical parts of your body. And then you have like this chamber, right? You have this like chamber of your voice, and it resonates off your body and your bones and then bounces off to other people. Having great vocal range and vocal presence and breath capacity. So your instrument has to A, have the capacity to do it, and B, has to have emotionality, and being able to drop into maybe a lower register or a higher register is a really fast and powerful way to get into a character or get into an emotional moment or get into an expression that is maybe a little different from how you express yourself every day. I know that if you're like working on singing, it can feel like, is this actor related? The best thing I can say is when I was in conservatory, somebody asked my Linklater teacher, which is another vocal technique, if that work would help them with their singing work. And her answer was, it's the same voice. Can you handle a lot of text or handle a lot of emotion and not quite simply lose your breath, like be fatigued when you're doing take after 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 take? I mean, one of the scenes I just did on Dope Sick last year was 8 hours of me just emoting and sobbing and feeling all of the characters' feelings. And I could do it with the consistency that I could do it in, and I feel like the authenticity that I could do it in, because I had the instrumental capacity to do it again and again and again and again and again without being worn out. And I actually left the day very invigorated as opposed to depleted, because I had the vocal capacity to handle that much on my body. And I'm so happy for you for doing the voice work.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
What you had said when you talked about your going into an interest in psychology and therapy was that you had said it aligned with a lot of your values. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I love this conversation about aligning with your values so much, because I think actors have to really ask themselves about their value system.
Definitely.
And whether or not this career, as they've discovered what it is, I want everyone to know this has many levels to it. And in my whole life, I've had experiences of like, oh, this is what acting is. Oh, this is what an acting career is. Oh, this is, and I've brought this podcast to and guests on to try and be transparent about all of those experiences that happen, no matter how many shows you have, no matter how many awards you have, any of that. Mm-hmm. People go through that all the time with great success and with less success. But really constantly asking yourself, does this career, as it stands, as I see it now, continue to align with my values?
Yes. To me, that question is what I'm doing, whether it's in my career, my personal life, with regards to my health, whatever it is what I'm doing on the day-to-day in alignment with my values, and figuring out what your values are. To me, that is the secret to a fulfilled and meaningful life. Again, I struggle with the word happiness because it has connotations that I think then become unrealistic. Happiness isn't really the point to me. It's about feeling fulfilled, feeling like your life has meaning. And in order to find those things, you really have to do some work and figure out, what are my most important values? And then when something comes along, or when you're struggling with something, you can ask yourself, is this in alignment with my values or not? And oftentimes doing the thing that actually is more in alignment with your values will feel more difficult and more painful in the short run, but in the long run is going to lead to that meaning and fulfillment. So yeah, what is it about acting? What is it about creating content? What is it about, all of that is a part of your value system? Because acting is not a value, right? What do you value? I value acting. Oh, okay. Maybe, but try to go deeper than that. Why do you value acting? What do you like about it? What does it bring to your life and other people's lives?
I love this conversation because I'm sure you spend a lot of time talking to actors about whether or not they still want to do it.
Absolutely.
And this is I'm sure a big part of the conversation is, what is it that is fulfilling you now, or that you can see being fulfilling? And again, I want to say that this fulfillment is also challenging during the pandemic because it's like you said, so much of what we love about the work is the community aspect, is, a band of players, coming together. And that is, even when you do get on sets and get to play, you are quarantined and you have masks on you and you are divided by plexiglass. And
I cannot even imagine.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Because I obviously haven't done that, and I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's changed the game for a lot of people who I think are basically like, if this is it, I'm out, which I totally and completely get.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to talk about this pyramid a little bit more as well, because you had said about getting that achievement, getting that fulfillment in that achievement way is going to be the thing that then brings them happiness. And I talk about this on the podcast all the time, that I had, is it the advantage? I'm not sure, of watching friends who were a little bit ahead in their careers from me get this success, and that didn't change things. And I remember really being depressed for several months when I sort of became clear on that, because I had placed all of my happiness in the pursuit of the attainment of this thing. And not surprisingly to anyone who maybe could have seen what was coming, once I did reach a level of success and had sort of reached a place that I felt like if I died today, it would no longer say on my obituary, Audrey Moore, aspiring actress, but now would say Audrey Moore, actress, Los Angeles, right?
Nice.
Once I had sort of achieved that, I did start having lots of panic attacks. It was now, in retrospect, really clear to me that I had put so much anxiety and so much energy and so much white knuckling into the achieving of something. And surprise, the achieving of that thing didn't unlock my life into heaven. It was and welcome. Now every choice you make and every day you wake up, you're going to feel like you are just incredible and the sun is shining and there are no problems and life is heaven, and so that energy that I had put towards that success didn't have anywhere to go anymore. And so it was vibrating out of me like, blah, 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 blah. I have continually had to change my relationship with the work and with the career. I do think that if somebody is listening to this and is thinking, yeah, but I mean, once I'm making that much money,
Mhm.
Yeah, but once I have, I mean,
Mhm.
my friend booked this commercial and they made $50,000 off that commercial.
Mhm.
Yeah, but once I have that commercial and have $50,000, I'll feel,
Yeah.
fill in the blank. To those actors, I just want to say, I get that, and I doubt that I'm going to convince you otherwise, but I do want you to go and talk to 10 actors who are where you want to be. And you will see that it didn't solve life. And
Yeah.
we're talking a lot about infrastructure. I'm talking a lot about infrastructure in terms of do you have enough acting coaches? Do you have enough time, energy, and money to pursue this career? Do you have proper relationships? Do you have, sort of business structure? But what you and I are really talking about is do you have emotional infrastructure
Yeah.
for growth and success?
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have very little resiliency too. The more you build up that emotional infrastructure, the more that you sort of build up your bubble wrap, so to speak. And as it's so obvious, everybody knows this, the trying to break into or sustain a career in the arts, especially, the entertainment industry, is just a series of getting knocked down and criticized and told you're not good enough and taken apart and dissected in ways that are often not pleasant and getting rejected. And if you don't have that emotional infrastructure, how are you going to tolerate that? I remember being up for a commercial and the callback had gone so well. And when I left the door, they were yelling after me, that was great. Great job, Leigh. Oh, you're hilarious. And I was I got that. It was for Toyota. And my agent sent an email the next day that said toy. And I was oh my God, I got it. And it was Toy Drive. And of course, she wouldn't have emailed me if I'd gotten it, right? She would have called me and been you got it. And I remember that moment of realizing that it wasn't that, and and this was just a commercial, right? And granted, commercials, I don't know about now, but they used to be quite financially, quite lucrative if you booked a national, and that was a lot of people's goals. And that I was devastated that I didn't get that. That's a level of sort of rejection that in other walks of life you don't necessarily get as often.
It doesn't feel like going to work is always winning the lottery, maybe. And then you get really close to winning the lottery. And then they're it's between you and one other person to win the lottery this year. And then you're oh my God, I'm going to win. And then you don't.
Exactly. That's a really good metaphor for it.
It is emotionally taxing. And that reminds me of, when my brother, I talk constantly on this show about my brother and his struggles with addiction. And he had family week in rehab. And we had gone to family week in rehab and they were talking about, he struggled with alcoholism and they were talking about codependency. And they were going through this checklist of warning signs of codependency. I was well, I don't have any of those, except I could relate every single one to my career and my relationship with my career.
Wow.
And that I had a really codependent relationship with my professional pursuit. And one of the symptoms was that, if the success or failure of something swings you into I am a superhero, or it swings you into I can't get out of bed for 3 days, that is codependency. And I remember thinking well, right, but that's everybody I know feels like that. Everyone I know, is on a veil for a commercial and then gets and then is told they're released and then can't get out of bed for 3 days. That's and then I remember thinking well, maybe everyone I know isn't healthy.
And maybe that's not a good thing. Yeah.
That's exactly right. I remember thinking well, let's ask the next question. Is that good? I don't think it is. And just realizing I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think getting into a career and every almost win and is catastrophic and sends me to bed for a few days. And it's not that you can't have them sometimes, because it is emotional, but it's just how often do you want to be there? And just like you're saying in terms of this, I love this sense of the emotional health allowing resilience, because otherwise that is when I notice people start to become jaded, start to become bitter. It's because they are just so hurt.
Yeah.
they are creating these defense mechanisms emotionally to withstand the hurt.
Yeah. Bitterness, anger, these emotions feel protective and like strong, whereas the hurt that you're describing, the feeling rejected, the shame that you might experience if you haven't had the success that you were hoping for, those are really vulnerable, soft emotions that make us feel unsafe. So we'll often, like you said, come up with these emotional defense mechanisms like anger, bitterness, cynicism, resentment, judgmentalness, all of this stuff, because it feels more protected, it feels harder. And all it does is make you miserable.
That's so real. I mean, I have really felt that at moments in the pandemic, and I'm like,
Sure.
I am not a jaded person. And I'm like, like, I'm Audrey Moore. I am light and life, but where are you? Light, and my experience of it is quite painful, as it is not a fun day to day. There's no fulfillment like you're talking about. Are we getting fulfillment, joy, any of that? It's a very sad way to walk, and also is not what I signed up for this career for. I mean, that's the thing I'm always reminding people. I'm like, I didn't sign up to be an actor to be miserable, upset. Like if I want to be miserable and upset, I will literally go have a job that I will make consistent, excellent money in. I will go be miserable and upset in that one, and then I will go do acting on the side. If this is going to be my lifestyle, then I need to find ways that to maintain its joy, to maintain its pleasure, all of those things.
I think that's such an important point, because you can be miserable and upset doing anything. So why
choose this one?
Why choose this one that 97% of people don't make enough money to live on? And if you are going to choose it, exactly, you've got to find the meaning, you've got to find the joy, you've got to find the way for it to bring you fulfillment, or for other things to bring you fulfillment. And for you to recognize that even if you're not a successful working actor or a movie star, world famous movie star, you still have worth.
You're valuable.
And you're valuable, and you need to honor yourself wherever you are in life and take care of yourself.
One of my favorite good parent messages that my former therapist, now retired, used to say was that all the time, it was like a mantra I had to repeat, and it always made me cry, was, it's not what you do, but who you are that I love. And I remember thinking that to myself, and I'd be like, it's not what you do, it's who you are, but that I love. And I was like, because it was so strong.
Yeah. What about that resonated for you?
I think for me, what resonated is that, the codependency upon my career to validate my worth. And I think that's normal for, any job, right? Like you get a little bit of a self-esteem by doing a good job at your job. Like, that's
absolutely
great. But to what point is it healthy or unhealthy? And that message the fact that I got so emotional at that message really validated to me that I put all of my worth and value, which I knew, into my success as a working actor. And quite frankly, that was such a wonderful flag to me, because I was intelligent enough to realize that was not sustainable for a healthy career, that I would not be able to go in and do great work and sustain the lifestyle of a working actor with the downside of, if I don't perform my best today, or I don't get this role today, then I'm not valuable as a person, that I am worth less because I didn't receive this thing. And I just could see, like, I don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah. And I think this is a particular vulnerability for actors, because when you think about it, again, in other jobs, it's not so much about you. It's not so much about what you look like, what you sound like. As an actor, you're bringing your essence, yourself, and the way you look to every single audition. So there's an element that feels really personal, again, when you don't get it. So it feels like it's you. It's not necessarily even how good of an actor you are. It's, you weren't pretty enough, or you weren't thin enough, or you weren't.
Or the other actor knew the director because they'd worked with them before. Like, there's all kinds of reasons. I mean, my husband's a director, and there's all kinds of reasons that people aren't right for a role.
Absolutely.
And are fantastic actors.
Yes. And those things, the person knew the director, are so completely out of your control.
And you won't even know that. Like, you could maybe watch something and go, oh, well, they cast somebody really tall, or they cast, whatever it is, right? They went older, or they went younger. But if it's something like they already did an episode of blah, blah, blah show with them 2 years ago, how are you going to know that unless you're really going to sleuth the internet like a motherfucker? You're just not going to know.
And that is so often the case, because that's
so often.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of stuff happens in Hollywood, of course, just like in any
and
industry.
All businesses. Yep. Right. Exactly. Yep. That's right.
But it doesn't feel as personal in other jobs.
But wait, Leigh, wait. I have to interrupt you.
Help me. I need some help.
And now it's time for listener questions.
I'm so scared.
This listener question is brought to you by Carla Zuniga Hair on Instagram at Carla, Zuniga Hair on Instagram. I love Carla. So often we need a haircut that can do many things, whether it's be really goofy or be really suave or be really disheveled, all kinds of economic statuses maybe. And having a haircut that is versatile, I think, is really important. However you identify your gender, and having a haircut that can do many things when we're dealing with these self-tapes where you get like shoulders up, I think is such an important part of helping them see you in the role. So please do it with somebody who is qualified and fantastic. Carla Zuniga Hair on Instagram, Carla Zuniga Hair.
Hey, Audrey. This is SJ from Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a question. When is it time for an actor to move to LA? Now, I know that's probably like a broad question and would take some time, get an idea of their background, where they're at in their career. But I guess my question with that question is this. Should an actor wait to move to LA until they are SAG eligible? I guess that's my real question. Like I said, I'm from Atlanta. I want to move to LA late this year or even early next year, but I'm not SAG eligible yet. Would it make sense to just go ahead and get out there as soon as possible and just hit the ground running? So thank you so much for listening, for answering my question, and thank you for all you do with your podcast. It is so encouraging to me and so many others. It challenges me, and I look forward to your episodes released every single week. So thank you so much for what you do.
Hey, girl, hey. So I actually love this question. I think the first thing you should do is probably you should go back and listen to Christina Colgan's episode, the first episode of this season, because we talk a lot about market and why you should move from one market to another. For me, I think you should be union as soon as possible, no matter what. In terms of how it affects your move to Los Angeles, I really think that actually depends upon your age group. We had an agent on. You can go back and listen to Adrienne Pelarou. You can listen to my agent's episode number 43, season 3, episode 11. We talk about how basically if you're over 27, that's really when not being union starts to be a ding against you. When you're 22, a lot of actors that you're up against aren't union, so you not being union is sort of par for the course and doesn't necessarily hurt your chances for competition. But once you start getting to 27, that is when more people are union, so they don't need to bring you in if you are not. They don't need to take a chance on you. Even if you're eligible, they don't need to take a chance on the fact that maybe you think you're eligible, but you're not eligible, or you're lying about it, which unfortunately some actors do and puts everyone in a really bad spot. So being union becomes important at that moment. In terms of moving from Atlanta to Los Angeles, I have to say, I'm not sure that you have to do that. Atlanta in particular, I think, has grown its market viability and will continue to over the next 5 years and I think will really situate itself as a valuable player. In terms of what that means for you getting other roles, the top handful of agencies over there, I do believe, are being able to compete with New York and Los Angeles agencies for role shooting in Canada, role shooting in, basically anywhere that's not New York or Los Angeles. If your goal is to film shows in Los Angeles, if your goal is to be in half-hour comedy where the vast majority are shooting in Los Angeles, if your goal is to live in Los Angeles, if your goal is to book Ron Moore, Ryan Murphy, Shonda Rhimes, if that's something that you are really passionate about, then I do think that's happening in Los Angeles. You should be in Los Angeles. And in terms of getting there before being union or after being union, that depends a lot on your casting, your age range. I personally believe get your union card as soon as possible. Don't be eligible, but join and get educated and get your money. Get your safety, get your money. All right, I hope that's helpful.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Yeah, what I was going to talk about infrastructure again is one of the things I'm trying to discuss a lot now is that in order for you to have growth in your industry and have the infrastructure for growth, if you're overtaxing your workers, Oprah was famous for bankrupting companies because she'd have somebody on and then they'd talk about their product and then everyone would want to buy it. And then eventually she learned that she couldn't have people on the show if they weren't prepared for the Oprah effect.
Wow.
And it was because the demand was so high so suddenly that they didn't have the workers, they didn't have the materials, so quality control suffered, timeliness suffered, employee morale suffered, all of those things suffered. And what I tell people is in our profession, I am the product, I am the employee, I am the assembly line, I am all of it. If I'm not prepared for a quantum leap of growth, which is so much of what this business is just random, quantum leaps after 2 years, right? And if you're not prepared for that, then your product will suffer. Your assembly line will suffer. You won't be good at communicating and getting back to your customers in a timely manner. And you will then get a lot of anxiety and panic about the product not holding up, except you're the product. And that is why it is super common for people to get a series and have a nervous breakdown. Writers, directors, actors, anybody in the higher, once they sort of get a thing, and then they just melt because they were not prepared in all of the ways they needed to be prepared for that level of success.
And the pressure of it, when you finally get the thing, and the stakes feel so incredibly high. So if you don't have the ability to sort of notice that you are making the stakes incredibly high when they may or may not be, and the ability to catch yourself and regulate that somehow, then it's going to be really difficult to manage.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. The last thing I want to talk about, I want to be very mindful of your time. I know you have a baby. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk about randomized reward systems just a little bit, which is something that I'm always trying to remind people in terms of anxiety and all these things that we're talking about of I argue you have to be better with your emotional and spiritual and physical health as an actor than in another career. You have to be better with your financial health than another person in another career, because it is so chaotic that an actor really needs to have, I think, a lot of structure and a lot of, whatever that structure is, that can even be a free-flowing structure, but a lot of just continual maintenance on the self because there's so much chaos. And one of the things I'm always reminding people is that because the acting career is set up with a randomized reward structure. Yeah. And so do you want to tell them what that is? Do you want me to tell them what that is?
I can talk about that.
Let's do it.
It's sort of the metaphor that's often used as a slot machine. So you sit down at a slot machine, and nowadays, it used to be pull the handle. Nowadays you press a button, right? And you sit and you wait for the coins to come out. And every now and then they do. And that's what keeps you sitting there, because every now and then a lot of coins come out, and that's very exciting. You think, if I just sit here long enough and keep pressing this button, eventually they will come out again. It has to happen, right? It's statistics or something. And you have no control over it really, but you're convinced it's going to happen. And it does, right? It happens periodically, but who knows how long you're going to sit there. And this is the most reinforcing type of reward system. That's why things like in parenting, when you occasionally sort of give in to, for example, to a child's tantrum. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. That is the most reinforcing of tantrums, because the kid thinks, I just have to keep going. Eventually she'll give in if I just keep going. So randomized reward systems are the most reinforcing and tend to cause the most continuation of whatever it is that you're doing.
Whatever the habit is.
And the most anxiety, like you said.
Yes.
Because you don't know when the next one's coming.
And I remember just being kind of horrified and heartbroken by that analogy. I mean, like, oh, yeah, that sounds too familiar. Just reminding people, and it's not because, the business is bad, or it's just the way it's structured is a randomized reward system.
Yep.
The neuroses and anxiety and OCD and just exhaustive effort that is placed in trying to solve whatever the thing is to make the pellet appear after you pull the lever is so much of the maintenance. I just hope that in just sharing this, people can have the awareness of, like, it's set up that way.
Yeah.
It's designed for you to obsess over a way to solve it when there isn't like a foolproof way to solve it. And you can talk to any actor who started when they were 4 months old. You could talk to anyone who's second generation. You can talk to anyone who's been in it for 20 years, 50 years, whatever it is. And that having all the money and all the connections and all the resumes still doesn't change the randomized nature of it.
Yeah, that is such an effective way of looking at it, because then you can sort of release control a bit more. Again, it's radical acceptance of this is what it is. So I release control, which doesn't mean you do nothing. You do what you can, right? That is also what keeps people in it, right? And that's why are there so many people in LA who have spent years or maybe decades pressing that lever, right? And maybe the one pellet that they got was 20 years ago, but they're still pressing that lever. And again, not calmly and like, oh, I'm curious about what would happen if it, but like,
this is a nice life. I like this lever.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, gotta get a pellet.
Yeah, gotta get a pellet. Where's my pellet? Need a pellet. Yeah.
And I think that even for me, like, again, I got that first job so quickly. I think I got a big, fat, juicy pellet, like right off the bat. And I kept thinking, all it takes is, one audition could be the one that changes your life. And it can be.
And that is the hardest part that I'm always talking about, is like, it's true. On the one hand, it's true that you could audition this week for something and it can change. I have friends that has happened to. Lives change dramatically by one audition. But radical acceptance, are you okay with that not happening? Are you okay with the lifestyle of the actor with that not happening? Are you okay with being the person that happens for? You get a really great 10-year run and then you don't work again after that. I mean, the number of actors I know that's true for, right?
Absolutely.
So what I try to do with this podcast is bring just visibility to all of those angles. Again, it's just really right. I think to encourage an understanding of what this is. And then you can decide, do you want to radically accept this or something else?
And if you do, great. Because if you do radically accept it for all that it is, and some of which you don't know, right? So radically accepting the unknown too.
Where it is now.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we're, making it sound, like you said, like it's all bad and it's all misery. And And it doesn't have to be, even if you're not achieving the success that you want, even if you go a year without any acting work, you don't have to be miserable. You can have a career that maybe isn't what you thought an acting career would be. Be happy. If you are content overall with who you are as a person and can find meaning and purpose and value in other things too. And know who you are as a person.
And that is, to me, so powerful. And when people have that in this industry, it is incredibly magnetic.
Yeah, it really is. You can sense it.
You can sense it. And there is this sense of like, oh, you're a professional. I find like when people have that energy on set, and and again, it's not that like the anxiety of the neuroses ever like goes away. It's simply that it's managed and understood.
And accepted.
Accepted radically. To me, it's like when I'm on set and I see that, it is like this game sees game. And I feel like, oh, right, you get this. I get this. And then there feels like there's a lot of people treading water is the other energy. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I've learned how to effectively swim like this, and sometimes it's exhausting and sometimes it's freeing, and all of the things that any professional pursuit has as a part of it, and again constantly coming to that. And I will say my experience of it, for whatever this is worth, is the highs in radical acceptance, the fantasies, the highs of the fantasies even out, but then also so do the catastrophic lows.
Exactly.
And so it's a little like signing up for a healthier relationship.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to be in a relationship with a person where like the good times are just like magical and they're like so off the charts crazy, but then like they leave and they go out of town and they're like devastated on the floor and you're so upset because they're gone, and they come back and you're like there and they're going to fight and you're devastated. It's like, well, that's a lot, right? And a healthier, I propose, a more mature relationship is one that offers some highs, but just a lot of contentment and a lot of joy and a lot of, this is nice. This is a nice partnership. And then the low lows aren't as frequent or dramatic either.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking of the metaphor of a person who maybe has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, the highs and the low lows. Sometimes people who have been given that diagnosis really struggle with staying on their medication because not only have the low lows been evened out, so have the highs, and they miss the highs. So it's kind of a similar thing.
So
the low lows getting evened out sometimes comes at the cost of the highs getting evened out too. And ultimately that can lead to, again, being able to stick it out, being able to manage your energy.
Yeah, adjust your expectation, right? And get used to, like, that's the same thing that addicts really discover as they leave addiction, is that just like, when does my happiness come back? Because they're used to these euphoric highs and then these crashing lows. Everything else just kind of feels a little simple. And I do think like a lot of what is exciting to like our 14-year-old selves about acting is that high, is that rush of all of that. But it makes perfect sense to me that your relationship with something at 14 and your relationship with that same thing at 27 and then your relationship with that same thing at 40, that like your relationship should grow and develop and change. And if you have the same relationship with something as a 14-year-old, maybe you're doing yourself a disservice in some way. Maybe that's not a realistic expectation.
Yeah. I was thinking about the age factor as you were describing the highs and the low lows, and someone who's like 22 might be like, that's okay. I don't mind. It's worth it for the highs. And that's great. If that's working for you, it's great. The problem is, of course, that the low lows can really be bad. And if you enjoy the highs, great, enjoy them. How is that going to affect the rest of your life, though? Ultimately, you're not going to have the energy for that as you get older. It's going to damage your relationships, and other people are not going to want to be around for the highs and the low lows. It's not just about thinking, well, I can handle that. The low lows are worth it for the highs. It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to allow you to build relationships and build a sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, a full life.
A full life.
I mean, this is just I have to say, this is like one of the most profound conversations I feel like we've had on this podcast. I'm just so grateful for all the perspective. But wait, Leigh, wait. I have to interrupt you.
Help me. I need some help.
And now it's time for listener questions.
I'm so scared.
This listener question is brought to you by Jeff Pride at Self Tapes Here. That's Jeff Pride at Self Tapes Here on Instagram. Jeff Pride has been a session runner, a commercial and theatrical working booking actor for years here in Los Angeles. And he is so qualified. I mean, arguably one of the most qualified people I can think of to help you book. He has been helping actors book and has been getting paid professionally by giant companies, by some of the best casting directors in town for years to help actors be their best selves and book jobs. He is available for in-person tapes and virtual tapes. I love a Jeff Pride. Jesse, let's go ahead and replay the same audio from last week.
Audrey, so this guy Jeff's next level, huh? That was like the most fun I had in an audition in my entire life. Thanks once again for the recommendation. Like, I didn't think it was going to be like that.
Contact Jeff Pride at Self Tapes Here, and scream your little horror film head off in someone else's place instead of yours.
Hi, my name is Anonymous. So I am from Florida, and the agents down here aren't great. And so I have agents in other markets, which is great and everything, but I feel like I'm ready to level up where my regional agent isn't. How do I part ways nicely without hurting anyone's feelings? I feel like maybe neither of us are happy. I'm actually not sure why they even picked me up, but this would be a wonderful thing to know how to separate from the agent, because I'm a super loyal person and this hurts my heart, even though I know this relationship isn't working. So any guidance on that would be great. Thank you so much.
Hi there, Anonymous. I love this question. So the first thing I want to say is almost always when people separate from their reps, their response is like, okay, cool, thanks so much, understand, wishing you all the best. I would say 80% of the time, it's not a big deal, and it's just a bigger deal in your head than it is actually in reality. 20% of the time, you will get a massive freak out. Like, you'll get emails, phone calls, just lots of texts and hostility, and someone being like, I made you, I turned you into what you're really working, and I don't understand, and it's like just like total chaos. Okay, so if somebody's giving you that reaction, no, also that's why you shouldn't be with them. Like, that's not a stable person that should be negotiating your contract. So either way, win-win, no matter what reaction you receive. In terms of the technicalities, I really recommend reading some articles on human resources. HR is a pro in terms of firing people professionally. That's literally what they do. And they have really great success of firing people, and then at the end of firing them, instead of them having like a massive blow up that needs security, instead like the person being fired gives them like a hug and thanks them profusely, and they just manage it in a way that is really like kind and wonderful. So I recommend reading some HR articles. A great thing you can do if you have a manager is have your manager do it. If you're breaking up with a manager, you can have your agent do it. If you start getting a bunch of phone calls, just give them 24 hours before you respond, because you want to let them cool off, let everybody cool down. Another good thing to do, you don't want to make anyone feel bad about themselves. So a tactic, an HR tactic, is you affirm and you also don't vilify. So you don't want to say, I am leaving you because you're just not getting the auditions. That is sort of vilifying. And if they reach out to you and they say, I've been working with you for 3 years, I'm the reason you got those 3 credits, that's all me, you want to affirm, you're right. That's absolutely right. And I really appreciate it. You don't need to say, but, or da-da-da, just, you're right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. At the end of the day, anyone that you're leaving who understands how this business really works knows long-term relationships really are what matter, and that you could become a huge asset over time, and you could become a showrunner, or you could become a series regular, or, they want to nurture good relationships over time. It just depends on the relationship. I've done all of it. I've called people, I have emailed people, I have gone in person, and all of it has been fine. The times when it gets more upsetting to them is when they've really invested in you and you've gotten a bunch of results, and then you want to move up to somebody else and they feel like they've gotten you where you are. Those are hard. Those are maybe pretty emotional experiences. But again, when you've got to go, you've got to go. So good luck to you.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
I always end with a few questions. I know
Great.
You have a website. Do you want to tell people anything about how to find you, where to contact you?
Sure. Yeah. You can find me. It's Leigh Hall MFT. So my name is spelled LEIGHHALL.com. You can also look me up on psychologytoday.com. I do have a pretty small private practice right now because I'm actually working at a treatment center 4 days a week. But yeah.
Wonderful. I would love also, maybe you and I can put together a list of a couple of resources that I can post with this.
That'd be great.
In terms of other therapists, people at the Actors Fund, things like that. Books, maybe, things to, I don't know if you have podcasts, whatever your resources are. I'd love to share them with others and really be of service in that. And
that would be great. And I want people, again, to understand that we're not trying to say this career is impossible or it's all a downer or you're just going to struggle. There are things that you can actually do to make it more sustainable.
And I would say what I'm trying to communicate, which I'm always saying in this profession is that, and this podcast, is that it is Olympic, and that it takes that kind of focus and that kind of effort of true Olympic nature, where you have to be in really great shape emotionally, physically, mentally, and financially to compete at the highest level. Yeah. So it is not to say that it is, a downer. It is to say that it is competitive. It is ravenous. It is out there. And if that's exciting to you, because everybody knows that's exciting to me, but it's why I'm so passionate of everyone understanding what are some of the things you can do to set your life up so that you can have that attack, so that you can have that sustained success. My next question is, do you have any questions for me?
I would love to know. So you are what a lot of people aspire to be. You are a working actor. You have a great reel. You have a great resume. You were on one of my favorite shows, which is Better Call Saul. I love that show. So what do you think has been the most helpful for you in terms of dealing with all of this stuff? And I know it changes. And again, the pandemic has been, I think for a lot of people, the resources they had might have gone out the window or not become enough. Right. But whether it was in the past when things were more normal or recently, anything that you've found that's really helped with that, making sure that your emotional infrastructure is intact?
Yeah, it's no surprise we're talking today. I would say therapy. Like, I have been in and out of therapy the majority of my life and never had a thing that I think a lot of people have on it, which I always found like kind of weird. But, so no judgment to anyone else. So just my perspective on it was like, what do you mean you think it's weird to go to therapy? Like, I just didn't have that upbringing at all towards it. I have been very blessed to, I don't know, I have always had this point of view, like, I sort of treat depression and anxiety like a snake in the front yard. Like, if I see a snake in the front yard, I'm not going to be like, oh, there's a snake in the front yard. That's weird. I'm like, did you know there's a snake in the front yard? I'm not going to wait till the snake gets in the house before I'm aware that there's snakes here. And I was just raised with a real awareness to that.
Oh,
and
that's
I feel very lucky to have that. I was very encouraged at a very young age that seeking help and assistance is not only is it not weak, but it's incredibly brave. Definitely. and it takes a lot of strength. I have continually been able to level up, I think, because each level has a new unfolding of expectations and demands which are triggering. and sometimes disappointing and sometimes very exciting and sometimes overwhelming. And I have really maintained a therapy practice throughout my career. I have had some really profound moments of therapists really pointing out things like, I remember one time I was really freaked out about getting like a showcase produced when I was like 24 before I like went to go see family for family reunion. And I was like really freaked out about the showcase coming together before Thanksgiving. And my therapist at the time was like, well, it seems like you're really, really upset about getting this together. Why are you trying to get it done before you go home? And I was like, well, because and she's like, I just wonder if perhaps it's because you want to go home and tell people all these things that you're doing. And I remember like, and she said the funniest thing. She said, just lie. And I was like, oh, and she's like, just tell them that if it's really that concerning to you, like, just tell them you're doing really well. Just tell them. Yeah, just tell them you're auditioning for this show and you're auditioning for that show, and they'll be excited for you. And I was like, oh, just lie. That's interesting. And the truth was I didn't have to, because just the fact that being in Los Angeles and pursuing acting was astonishing to all of my family at the time, right? But I had this whole pressure of a level of success that I wanted to have. And that was just like one small example of a perspective from somebody that doesn't have skin in the game. And I've always found that to be really important.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
That
these simple things like, why are you so concerned about getting this done before the family reunion? Like a simple question like that. That might seem really obvious, but it didn't occur to you, right?
Right.
I mean, maybe it did, but
it didn't. It didn't occur to me that I was putting a pressure that didn't belong on it. And it was a stupid showcase. I wasn't like trying to book like a recurring guest star. I was literally trying to produce a showcase for casting directors to show up.
Right.
Like as though anyone in my family would even know what any of that meant, right?
Yeah.
Who casting directors are, any of it. But the pressure I had put on myself, and again, from somebody without skin in the game, because getting that perspective from a boyfriend or from a friend or from a teacher or from an agent or from a coworker, I might be defensive and it might sound like a judgment or an accusation. But what I thought was so funny is just like the silliness of just lie. I felt like helped me to see that it was silly.
That I was lower the stakes.
Lower the stakes. Like just who it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? And that just grounded me. And I've had many experiences like that of being fragmented, being triggered by something, and having a really great partner and a therapist who has said to me, oh, well, that's because of this thing. Like you've always struggled with this thing. And I'm like, oh yeah. I don't need to do that right now, I think. I know you do cognitive behavioral therapy, and so I think it's just a way to, like, it takes me out of magnification. Yeah. It takes me out of all of those all or nothing thinking moments that I think are so normal for humans, and definitely, like, I'm dramatic. I'm an actor. Right. So, of course, I over-dramatize experiences, and I find it very helpful to have somebody being like, well, maybe we're exaggerating, and maybe we're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. And just the thought of that often makes me go like, oh, right. This opportunity is not a make or break thing or whatever.
Well, that's very nice to hear as a therapist. I always like to hear when people say that therapy has been a great help to them.
I did a series on here called Get Your Shit Together series, and we had a series of actors who got their shit together and really started working. And I asked them, like, what are some things? And a vast majority of them said therapy. And I asked all of them, I'm like, how long are you in it? And all of them is about 6 months. They're like, in about 6 months of therapy, suddenly they started working. I think that's just getting rid of whatever stuff you have that you're bringing into auditions, that you're bringing into opportunities, that's like bringing a weight to it and getting in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next question. What is the best part about your profession to you?
I think it feels, as we were sort of talking about before, that it's really in alignment with my values. You know, you don't end every session feeling like I changed that person's life. At some sessions you end feeling like, oh, I really didn't do a good job on that.
Right.
But for the most part, you are building relationships that are meaningful to the other person and meaningful to you. And again, sort of providing perspective for people, providing options for people that they may not have considered, often provides relief. Sometimes it might be in the moment. Sometimes it might be a shorter term relief. And at other times, you know, it really kind of sets people on a different path. That is, I bring up my dad. I had asked, my dad was in the Air Force and a career Air Force officer. He went to Princeton as well. And I remember when I was younger, I was like, Dad, you went to Princeton. You could have made a lot of money. Why didn't you, why did you go to the military? You could be rich. And he said, it was always really important to me to do something that was bigger than just me. And serving my country in this way to me feels like that I'm doing something, I'm serving a higher purpose. It's not just about making money. So it's always been important to me that my work has that quality to it, that I feel like I'm actually doing some good in the world. I'm bringing something potentially lasting that's positive into the world. That, and then I just have some really great, amazing conversations with people.
Yeah.
Fun to talk to people.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Communicating.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. I want to go back to your actor days. What do you wish somebody had taught you or managed to get you to understand when you were just a wee babe entering the business?
I think kind of what you are talking about today, which is get your shit together, internally. Stop waiting for that one part to come along that's going to change your life, that then you're going to be a complete person. You are already a complete person. Now get that complete person into the best emotional, mental, and physical shape that you can. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect, by the way, but to the best of your ability, take care of yourself, and you're more likely actually to be successful. More importantly, you're more likely to not suffer.
Yes. More importantly, I'm so glad you made that distinction. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question, we do mildly interesting. So this can be literally anything that you have watched or you've read or you liked or you learned or something you recommend, anything that you find mildly interesting.
I read and watch TV all the time. I mostly read fiction. Although, of course, I read a lot of stuff related to psychology. I've really been enjoying books set in other countries lately. I read a book called Intimacies that takes place in The Hague and really enjoyed that.
Love.
The author's name, I cannot now remember.
We'll post it. We'll look it up and we'll post it for everyone.
Intimacies. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was such a beautiful conversation, and I think it's going to provide, a lot of perspective to a lot of people and hopefully encourage just some awareness emotionally about them and the relationship that they have to their careers and to their work.
I really, really, really enjoyed it. I felt like I could have talked all day long. So
that's how I feel.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll have you back on. I feel like we need to have you back.
Love to be back on anytime.
Super excited. Wonderful. Next week on Audrey Helps Actors, is your acting class a cult? Spoiler alert, it probably is. We've got the fantastic Lola Blanc, one of the co-hosts of the Trust Me podcast. She is a cult survivor and a cult educationalist and an actress and a musician. And I wanted someone to come on and talk about cults because during the pandemic, I don't know about you, I watched a lot of cult documentaries. And it was unfortunately very, really reminded me of a lot of what we do in this profession, from our classes to our business to all of it. So I'm very excited about that. Special thanks to Leigh Hall. Thank you so much, Leigh, for giving us your time. I can't wait to have you back on. This episode was edited by Austin Grant. Austin Grant, you know I adore you. I can't wait for you to be richer than all of us. This episode was mixed and mastered by Thomas Hank Snodgrass, produced by Jesse Lumen, still so handsome, everyone. It's been a hard couple years, and I have to say, he's managed to get even handsomer. Show music by Ari De Niro and theme song by Alok Mehta and 108 Hill. All right, everyone, don't forget your towel.